What's up guys, John Bird III here. We're back again for another video. Today's video, we're going to talk about a technique that you definitely need to be throwing right now this time of year, doing the pre-spawn and the spawn. And that is the Wacky rig and also the Nico rig. And so my setup for the Wacky rig and the Nico rig is literally the exact same setup. So I use the same setup for both techniques. So we're going to go ahead and jump into it. You already know we're going to talk about the rod, we're going to talk about the reel, we're going to talk about the line, and we're going to talk about the bait. We're going to walk through the whole entire deal. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So if you watch my video from last week, you already know when you just see this gold spool, you know what this reel is. And it's the Custom Light Shallow Spool. So Luz just released this reel right here at the Bassmaster Classic. And I'm going to just tell you this reel is awesome and it's super smooth. So in that video, if you go and watch, you're going to get a real more in-depth review of the reel. So I'm just going to kind of cover the highlight points of this reel because in that video we go really in depth about this reel right here. So you definitely want to go back and watch the video. But one thing I like about this reel is lightweight. The reason why I chose this reel right here is because it eliminates all the backing. You literally just tie your braid on there, tie your FG knot, tie your bait on, and you good to go. That's why I chose the Custom Light Shallow Spool. I already had a lot of time or seat time, as you would say, with the regular Custom Light. So when the Custom Light Shallow Spool came out, it was like, it's kind of like a no-brainer. It's like, it's saving me money because you already know bass fishing is an expensive sport. And so any way you can save money and cut costs, that's the way that you want to go. And so when I got this reel right here, it allowed me to save some money because I don't have to worry about backing. I literally just tie my braid on there and I'm ready to go. It's lightweight, as I already said, and the drag is super, super smooth. Just like in the regular Custom Light, it is super smooth. It's no different in the Custom Light Shallow Spool. It is very light. And one thing I want to go ahead and mention, again, as I mentioned in the previous video, you will not have to worry about spooling this reel. You can make a very long cast and you will not spool it. So if for anybody that is on the fence when it comes to Luz shallow spool reels, you don't have to worry about it because it's not going to happen. So that is the reel that we use on my Wacky rig setup. Now we're going to go into the rod. Now I'm going to preface this just so you know, you don't need an expensive rod for a Wacky rig. But I have one and we're going to talk about it. But I just want to make sure I set the record straight. You don't need an expensive rod to throw a Wacky rig. But we're going to talk about why I have it and why I chose this particular rod to want to test out for throwing a Wacky rig. So the rod that we have right here, this is the Team Luz Elite Series rods. So if you have not used one of these rods, you don't know much about them. These rods came out back in 2022 at ICAST. These rods retail for $350. And so that's pricey. And on top of that, that seems like that's a lot of money to use a rod just to throw a Wacky rig for. And I would just say it is. But the rod is awesome. Some of the features that I like about this rod right here, I like the reel seat because it has the wind grips that go all the way around. And I actually like how it feels because normally I tend to hold my reel where they're between my ring finger and my middle finger or between my ring finger and my pinky finger, just depending on how I'm feeling that day. And so I like that the wind grip goes all the way around the reel seat. And that's one of my favorite features. And it also has the VTR ring, which stands for Vibration Transfer Ring. And so what happens is when you get those light bites, it sends a vibration from the end of your line to the tip of your rod. And then when your rod feels that vibration transfer ring transfer it and you're able to feel it in your finger. So when I wrap my finger around the vibration transfer ring, I'm actually able to feel those very subtle light bites. And so when you're going into more higher end rods, more expensive rods, you start to get more features that allow the rod to be a lot more sensitive. It cuts down on weight and you get a very, very high end rod anytime you start to spend a little bit more money. And so I chose this rod simply because of the features that it has, from the guides to just the reel seat, the vibration transfer ring, and the weight quality. Like the weight of this rod is super light. And y'all know I like to use lightweight rods, lightweight reels. It cuts weight on the fatigue in your wrist. And when you're fishing 8, 10, 12, 14-hour days, you want to make sure you have the lightest setup possible. So that's why I chose the Custom Light Shallow Spool, because the reel is super light, and that's why I chose this rod, because the rod is lightweight. But not only that, it is very, very sensitive. Now, I've not only thrown a Wacky rig with this, but I've also thrown a shaky head with this a little bit as well, and I like it for that. But I also have a dedicated shaky head setup, and we're going to get into that as well. Another rod option, I'm gonna give you two other rod options that you can go and pick up that will be great for a Wacky rig that's not as expensive as this rod. You can get the Team Lose Signature Series Mark Zona all-purpose rod. It's a 7-foot medium extra fast, or you can get the Team Lose custom light rods, and I think it's a 7-foot medium fast, and it's called the all-purpose casting rods, and that rod is about $159. So the Signature Series 189, the custom light rod is 159, and so those I feel like are great middle of the pack price range rods that you can use, and they're still just as sensitive, and they are lightweight. But this is just the rod that I have, is the Team Lose Elite Series rod. Now, one thing I also want to go ahead and point out, and I didn't talk about the specs on this rod. This rod is a 7-foot medium fast. Now, this is going to sound a little weird, and it's kind of funny. I can't skip a Wacky rig with the extra fast tip. And I don't know why. I think it's more so user error compared to anything else. But when it comes to Wacky rig, I just like a fast tip. And that seems to work a lot better for me. And I like an extra fast when I'm fishing the drop shot, which is why the rod that I mentioned, the Mark Zona all-purpose rod in the Signature Series, it's my drop shot rod, because it gets into the backbone fast, and I like that whenever I'm fishing a drop shot. Whereas with a Wacky rig, I kind of like a little bit more of a parabolic action, so I like a little bit more give to it. And every time, like I said, when you're trying to skip, you need that rod to low, and I feel like for me personally, I skip a Wacky rig better with a fast action versus an extra fast. So the bait that I have on here, and everybody's stick bait choice is very different. I mean, there's so many on the market. I feel like every brand has their stick bait, and a lot of people choose the Yamamoto. I don't like the Yamamoto because they're too soft, in my personal opinion. But I choose to use the Strike King Ocho. And so one thing I like about the Ocho, this bait is heavy. Like, it has some weight to it. And I like that when you're talking about skipping a Wacky rig. Like, I think it's perfect. It loads the rod tip up very, very nice. And you're able to send this thing a long way. And another feature that I like about the Ocho compared to like the Yamamoto Cinco, the Ocho also is a lot more durable than the regular Yamamoto Cinco. I mean, it is what it is. I like the durability of that. And anytime you're talking about fishing, anything that you can have that'll save you money. Again, if this bait is you may get 1 or 2 more bites compared to the Yamamoto Cinco, where you may get 1 or 2 fish on that. If I can get 4 or 5 fish on this, this is the route that I'm going to go. Now, even though it's heavier, it still has a very slow fall, and it has a lot of action on this bait. And I like this. This bait also works real, just Texas rigging it. Personally, I feel like might be the best stick bait to use just for Texas rigging, and you just flipping it around, lay down, cypress trees, dock posts, just Texas rig, 1/8 ounce weight, 1/16 ounce weight. So super light weight like that. The Ocho is a sleeper, and a lot of people don't talk about it because everybody just so gung-ho on the Yamamoto Cinco, but the Ocho is a great alternative. Another alternative, I guess I'll go ahead and tell you about this also, is the Strike King Shimmy Stick. That's another cool one as well. I like the durability of that, and it's very, very similar to the Yamamoto Cinco, but again, it is a little bit more durable than your traditional Yamamoto Cinco. So whatever your favorite stick bait is, grab that, whatever you got confidence in. I like the Ocho. I think the Ocho is pretty cool. And like I said, I like the weight and the durability of it. And it's still soft. So even though it's durable, it's still soft, but you're able to get more fish out of it. And that's why I choose to use it. On the reel, I got 8-pound tour grade braid to an 8-pound tour grade fluorocarbon leader. That is my line setup. I don't like line, as we talked about with the drop shot, but I will say when you go to an 8-pound braid to an 8-pound lead fluorocarbon leader, it will send this bait a long way. And it skips better and it comes better off the reel, in my opinion. I've noticed when I was using heavier braid and a heavier fluorocarbon leader, I wasn't able to cast as far or wasn't allowed to skip my bait as far under a dock as I would like it to. And so when I switched to the 8-pound braid to the 8-pound fluorocarbon leader, it was just like, man, it was night and day difference, point blank period. And so the connection knot that I tie on here, I tie the FG knot. It took me a while to really learn how to tie the FG knot. And the part where it took me the longest to understand was the finishing knot. Where I learned to do the finishing knot, I had the opportunity. I signed up to be a marshal on the Bassmaster Elite Series. This had to be back in probably about 2022, somewhere like that. And this was when the Elite Series went to Santee Cooper. And on day one, I got to marshal with Buddy Gross. And he said to me that morning, it was funny. He was like, "You're probably going to have to see me tie an FG knot at some point today." And I was like, okay. And so he ended up having to do that. And I could never figure out how to finish the knot just right. And I watched him do it. And ever since then, I've been good to go, because I noticed I wasn't finishing it right, and then when I would pull it, the knot would start slipping. And so once I watched him do it and I realized what I was doing wrong, I never had a knot slip. I done caught plenty of fish with this connection knot. And to be honest, when we're talking about knots, you have to find a knot that you can tie efficiently, effectively, and that you know that it's not going to break. And that the best knot that you can tie is the best knot that you need to tie whenever you're fishing, whether that's tying on like a regular traditional worm hook, a flipping hook, whether you're tying a drop shot, braid the leader, whatever else. Find the knot that you can tie the fastest, find the knot that you can have the most confidence in, and find a knot that you know that is going to be strong. And for me, once I figured out how to tie that finishing knot, it was night and day difference. And I just like it because it comes through the guide very, very well. That's another difference that I've learned when I went to lighter braid to a lighter fluorocarbon leader, that the knot is a lot smaller and and it's coming through the guides a lot quicker, and is also not hanging up as much. So when you got into the bigger braid and the bigger fluorocarbon, it it catches a little bit, and I don't like that. And so, but once I switched, downsized my line and stuff like that, I was like, oh man, like I said, it was just night and day difference, and I haven't had any issues with my knot. The FG knot takes a lot of practice, so sit down, take your time, really try to learn how to tie that knot, and I promise you, once you figure out how to tie it, you won't go back. So that's it for today's video. That's my Wacky rig / Nico rig setup. I don't deviate from this as much. Now I will say this, for the Nico rig side, and I forgot to mention this, my worm that I choose to use for a Nico rig is the Fat Baby Finesse worm, and I normally put a 1/32 ounce nail weight in there. So that is also something that I want you to keep in mind as well. A lot of companies have a bunch of different nail weights, and you can vary the weight size based on how fast you want it to fall. But the sleeper worm is the Strike King Fat Baby Finesse worm. I love that worm. And I tend to use natural colors, your green pumpkins, your black and blues, blue crawl, red flake, and there's a couple other colors that I tend to use. And I mean, you can't go wrong with any of them. But that's my Nico rig worm, and I just want to make sure I let y'all know what the worm is and the weight size on that. So again, 1/32 ounce Fat Baby Finesse worm. So make sure you stay tuned for the next video next week. We're going to continue to dive into all my setups. So we got a lot of videos to cover because we got a lot more setups to go over. But I hope these tutorials and these videos have been very educational, and that it's allowing you to think through what is going to be the best rod and the best reel that you can afford, that will not only get the job done, but you can fish effectively, you can fish comfortably, and you're not going to have so much fatigue in your wrist. So once you're able to dial in your setup, I promise you, you will feel a lot more confident fishing a technique that you don't even have confidence in. Over this past weekend, we had a really, really good day on Lake Murray, and we were catching them on the drop shot, And y'all know I hate that technique, but because my setup was dialed to the T, I felt confident. Even though I hate the technique, I was still confident. And that is what you want. You got to have confidence at the end of the day. But the confidence don't start with the bait or the technique. It starts with the setup. So make sure you dial in your setup. So make sure you go ahead, like this video, share this video with somebody that's trying to find the right setups for their techniques. I'm JB3. I got to get back to living the dream. I'll catch you later.